That brings me on to, something that I was aware of from your posting in the last few weeks, which was when we talk about change, when we talk about, and again, you put it so eloquently in the sense that you'd be the change. And that is an old adage. That is an old mantra, be the change that you would like to see. And it's very simple, like all of this. In the end, when you boil it down to its substance, it is so simple. It is to just be. But as we sit here today, and for viewers and listeners so far, as I've followed this podcast and this conversation, this exchange, you talked to your page, you got your page up to 3.5 million followers on Facebook. Yeah. Now, it's important to remember that, Educate.Inspire.Change.org is the website, and you've got obviously all the pages that we've all got, but the Facebook page is where it started, and that was the one that really, chewed up those numbers. And recently that page has been removed, and we all live in times of uncertainty, and there's obviously a public health situation, but there's also a situation happening digitally with our freedom, with our ability to express not only our speech, but our thoughts. And at this point in this conversation, knowing what we know now about your story and how you've arrived where you are today, take us back to those few weeks ago when you wake up and that's been taken away from you with no explanation. And again, as we've just said, if that vehicle for you to apply that change that you are living and then expressing through your page, we've just removed that. That's a big chunk of inspiration. That's a big chunk. And I know you weren't the only one. There was a big number of pages that were just offering alternative, holistic, meaningful, spiritual ideas. Gone.
I know. And basically I remember I was actually at Rhythmia having lunch, and I got a notification to my page saying that there's been a 15-day, your distribution will be reduced for 15 days due to some kind of issue related to spam. They said I was spamming. So I received this notification and I got a bit confused. So I checked my laptop, opened the page, and within an hour, the page got unpublished. I didn't get any email, any support. No, not even an option to appeal. Normally you get unpublished, you appeal straight away. But this happened on December the 9th. And then someone then later sent me an article on the same day saying, by the way, Kash, I see your page is on a list of pages. Your page is on a list, and it's like 20 pages, and they've all been taken down at the same time. And the reason being is we were all sharing content from a third-party website. So one of my friends owns a website called The Hearty Soul, and he shares content about health and wellness. And I think 2 of his articles out of like 5,000 mentioned vaccines, mentioned them and questioned them. It didn't say they're good or bad. It just questioned them and, questioned the validity of them. And there's lots of people out there that protest against vaccination. There's lots of evidence out there to suggest they might be linked. So because we even spoke about it, or they classified us as a ring of pages that were spreading misinformation around vaccinations, and they just decided to unpublish a stroke of a button, And this is a very important time in history. What's happening digitally just now? Facebook, Google, Amazon, YouTube have a monopoly essentially on the digital space. They can choose what we see, they can choose what we hear, and it's like a modern day digital book burning. It really is. Centuries ago, armies would conquer countries and they would burn libraries to the ground to get rid of that civilization's history. And it's what's happening now. It's a digital book burning. It's no different than before. The difference is now it's happening on a global scale across the entire planet at the same time. They don't care where you are. They don't care what country you're in. They don't care if it's 10 million, if it's 20 million, if it's 100 million people follow you. They don't care. So when I'm silenced, it's not me being silenced. It's 3.4 million people right to listen to me is being silenced. They chose to like my page. They chose to follow me, and they can choose what to believe and what not to believe. They're sovereign beings. But what Facebook are doing is they're taking that power into their hands and saying to those 3.4 million people, no, you don't have the right to follow who you want to follow. We choose who you follow. We choose what information you consume. Even the act of recently banning Donald Trump is a huge, unprecedented, case to say that we have more power than the president of the most powerful country in the world, and we are choosing to silence him. That's insane, bro. That's like there's these powers are coming up now, and these powers are tech giants, and tech giants are now having more power than countries. You know, it used to be like armies, and the more soldiers you had and the more weapons you have. Now it's not. Now it's the more digital information you have. That gives you the power, and it's very scary because there's no one governing them.
No, and we'll make mistakes that don't get recognised until, you know, by the people that. Oh, have we lost you, Kash?
There's no one. Even the government can't come after them. I hear you.
Yeah, you're back. Yeah. And when you refer to Trump there, I mean, and again, very polarizing character. Let's take away, you know, the character, and let's say that, you know, this is important because, as you mentioned, to remove the speech of the president, you know, one of the most powerful people on the planet, to remove that sets a precedent that is untold. And then they remove in entirety a social media platform that he and many, many millions of other people use, that he was obviously, they were aware that he would be very vocal on there from that point onwards. They just removed that entirely from the internet.
Is that Parler you're talking about?
Parler, yeah. I mean, so frightening. And this is one hell of a slippery slope that I think, you know, we can go back several years when it started. You know, a famous one most people will know is Alex Jones being removed, you know, and lots of people argue, yep, that makes sense because he says some crazy things and all the rest of it. But the point is that when you start, that's it. You know, that you're on the slippery slope and it's going to arrive at your door, you know. Yeah. And it's so frightening. For me, as you say, it's probably the most frightening thing that's happening right now for me.
Yeah, big time. And there's so many ramifications of this. Where does it stop? You know, like I'm hearing how they're going to start bringing technology into there's a thing called, I can't remember the name, Bill Gates is behind it. It's the World Economic Forum, and they've got this new, it's very public plan for
the Great Reset.
The Great Reset. Yeah, the Great Reset. And they're trying to merge like biology with technology. They want us all to be vaccinated. They want us all to be chipped. They want to know where we are all times, facial recognition everywhere. And it's like this dystopian society they're trying to build, and they're doing it in our faces, like blatantly. And the thing is this is what I was talking about earlier, is a miseducation of society, how we've all been brainwashed. They've numbed us to such a state where 80 to 90% of civilization is blindly going along with this. We're actually slaves to a system, and we're actually worshipping the people that are enslaving us. We're voting them in. We're giving them our money, and we're doing it blindly, you know. And there's only a very small percentage, maybe 1, maybe 5, I don't know, of people that are slightly woke, that are realizing, hang on a second, this is an infringement on my human rights, you know, like being forced vaccinations or microchips, or being told what I can and can't do. It's going to be a case where you can't travel to certain countries unless you have these things done. Even me speaking to you just now, I'm hesitant with my words because I'm thinking, where's this going to be posted? Yeah. And I'm worried. Like, okay, we've touched on these topics that are very sensitive. Is this going to result in your podcast being taken down? Is it going to result in...
And we can do this. Yeah, we are. There we are. Yeah, and isn't it crazy? Because earlier on in the conversation, we're talking about becoming omnipotent with plant medicines and flying through the sky in spaceships. But it's this bit that you literally do have a visceral bit, you know, and we've been vocal on this podcast, and we try and make the caveat that we're not, again, saying this is right, this is wrong, this is a conspiracy, this is some kind of, you know, whatever. It's not. It's just we're conversing about the experience we are having. You're a content creator, you're somebody who built a career and a livelihood from that work that you put in, all those hours in the bedroom at your mum's place, building that page up, you know. 8, 9, getting on for a decade of your effort, and you wake up and it's gone. And we are not causing any uproar, or when we are, or asking questions even, is just we're not able to get to the source. and it's happening at such a speed. It's so frightening. If I check into my pages I follow on YouTube, alternative news, as well as I check in with the mainframe, because you've got to have that balance, and I cannot get my head around the amount of things that are happening one after the other that are removing liberty, and in ways that are just, they don't seem real as it's happening. It just doesn't seem real. I cannot wrap my head around it. And if we don't do something, which is this talk, and if we can't talk, this is where I wanted to go with you, Kash. I know you're still processing, and it must be such a difficult thing. That 10 years of work, but how do you see yourself being able to share with other people on that scale in the future? Do we have to build our own communities? Do we have to build our own software? Are we going to, as we're seeing with Parler, they can't. No one's going to serve them. They can't get on the servers. No one will do it for them.
It's insane. I know, even because his servers were all at Amazon, and I think he had hundreds and hundreds of servers at Amazon, and they gave him 24 hours notice to move, knowing that he couldn't do that within 24 hours, It's insane. And I guess I've built 3.5 million followers over 8 years, and I don't envisage me being able to do that again over the next a few years on the same platform. Without a doubt, I don't want to be on Facebook. Most people don't want to be on Facebook anymore. I'm looking for alternatives. There's a company I found called Mighty Networks that allow you to host your own app, and it's a community-based app. And I'm looking into this, and I'm thinking about, if I can have an app that requires a subscription where people are really invested. So my idea is this: I would rather have 5,000 invested followers that are really dedicated to making change than 3 million people that have just liked a button and liked a page and share my content. It's great to have that, and I value it, but I'm now at the stage where we can make a real impact and a real change on a smaller scale, but have bigger impact, So imagine if I have 5,000 people follow me on an app, and it might take me a year to build that, or 2 years, who knows? And these people are paying me for us to collectively make the change. So we're having online courses, Wake Up from the Matrix, plant medicine, shamanic practices, meditation, yoga, whatever you want to call it, all this stuff to raise your vibration so you can be the change you want to see. This is what our purpose is. And we're having support groups. We're having weekly Zoom group calls where we can support one another, like an online community. And these people are paying for this service. So it's really impactful. They're really invested. That to me could have a bigger change than what 3 million Facebook followers could have. And I'm more heading in this direction now. Is how can I have and we can also have in-life events. So what I'm thinking about doing is having this community-based app, and then once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, we host in-life events or retreats here with me, or retreats in Costa Rica where we can have 50 or 100 people come down from, do you know what I mean? Who and we can actually together have that family and be the change. And long term, my goal is to buy land. I want to buy land here in Costa Rica. That's actually quite affordable. When you go into the jungle, you can buy land really cheap. You can get acres and acres, and then hopefully get some investment, create some pitch decks. I don't know what, I'm just thinking out loud, and build community, build our own homes, be sustainable.
Oh, we're back. Building our own homes.
So we don't need to rely on these tech giants and on governments to sustain us. We can sustain ourselves. Think about this. Once you buy your own land, once you build your own home, and once you have your own farm and you grow your own food and everything's sustainable, solar power, your own water, what do you need after that? You don't need anything. You know what I mean? You can literally live off your own land forever, and you don't need to ever leave. Obviously, we would leave, but we don't need to. And that's the important thing. I'm trying to stress to people, you can be sovereign. You can live a stress-free life with no bills. Thinking about that, you've got a farm, you've got your own food coming, you've got your own water coming, you've got your own sustainable energy coming.
That's it.
People have been... and then we can do this together in communities of hundreds and thousands of people. It's happening here in Costa Rica already. There's a guy here called Stephen Brooks who I did a podcast with on my own podcast, and he's got his own communities here, Punta Mona, I think Eco Village, all these different communities that he's building, and he's building a blueprint for what's possible. They're recycling their own manure, they're burning it into energy. All the houses are built with wood that's on the land where they live. Nothing is sourced from outside the land. And it's amazing when you see how people can live and function in such harmony. They all eat together. They all, live together. They have community events every day or every night or every week. And it's just beautiful. And it's where I see my future lie. And these are blueprints. So once we create a blueprint or an idea, it can be copied and multiplied across the world. And this is the key. we can create ideas and visions and let people run with them, and we can have different villages and different communities all around the world, people popping up, buying land, creating their own communities. And this is where I see, this is coming from censorship, We were speaking about censorship, but it's all coming back to the same thing, to sovereignty, to realizing that we don't even need to be censored. Why put ourselves on the platform in the first place?
It's also coming back to what you said in the beginning when we talked about the history of psychedelics and before the momentum kicked in, smaller communities. We lived in smaller communities where we were accountable. You were the wise man, you be the wise man, you be the warrior, you be the, I definitely feel like that's been happening in my physical life. I've been doing that. I mean, we removed our children from school last year. They're only young, 6 and 5 and 3. Mm-hmm. But based on this energy, based on my feeling, based on the programming and just the overwhelming macro feeling of like everything we've discussed so far, this just being herded into a way of life that is not necessarily what you're intrinsically driven to do, instinctively feeling to experience. I think that is it's paramount, and doing it digitally as well. We've been doing the same. We've literally just put a little website together. I mean, we're only in our first year. Literally, the 27th of January will be the birthday, first year for this Chew the Chat little podcast with myself. And we have our largest communities on YouTube at the moment, where we're about to hit 3,000 subscribers. And as you just said a moment ago, which rings true to me, having 5,000 people who are committed. And I've taken this from the podcast world, tangentially speaking, that I listened to mentioned earlier. I love that Chris Ryan often talks about this community that is close and tight, and he doesn't advertise, and people just Patreon stuff, or they send stuff in, or they build a website, or they illustrate the book. There's a real sense of community, and it means so much more, because when we are just scrolling through our Facebook, and I've followed your page, and I've followed his page, and I've followed their page, there's a disconnected responsibility there, isn't there? It's just more, it's just in the pot. The abundance is kind of, I don't know, it just removes the meaning, the connection of it. And I think digitally, that's where it's at. We've got our little website up. We're going to start trying to, build the back end of that to be able to hold that space for the people who really want to be there. And it's just healthier and more nutritional for everybody involved that way, isn't it?
I agree. Yeah, and it's also empowering the people who follow you and part of their on your community to build their own communities. I mean, I imagine you're inspiring people to create their podcasts, to create their communities, and I want to do the same. I want to empower people to build their own brands, build their own businesses, build their own communities. So it's like this is actually bringing me onto something really interesting: is nature and mimicking nature. Yeah. So Terence McKenna says the answers you seek lie in nature, and it's so true. So I look at business. And I think, how could I build a successful business? And I'm looking at around me at nature and how does nature operate? And I'm looking at mushrooms and mycelium networks. So mushrooms and nature, it finds the most efficient way to spread energy. Yeah, the most efficient way. So this is why, even if you look at I think it's a Tokyo underground system or train system, they took I don't know if it's a type of algae or something, whatever it was. I'll need to look it up. And they wanted to see how this spreads. They put it and it just spreads in a certain way. And they mirrored this for their subway system. So it could be the most efficient way to get from place to place, And what I'm getting at is scalability, mycelium networks. It's not like top heavy. It's not like a pyramid. It's not like one had all the control and then everyone works under him. Yeah. It's like I want to empower everyone to have their own communities. I want to empower all the people that follow me to build your own brands, build your own communities. So it's like we're collectively supporting each other. We're all our own CEOs. We're all our own directors. We can all empower each and work together, instead of I control you and then everyone else, you control everyone else. And it's like that's the way old systems work. There's a king at the top and then it's a hierarchy. It's an old hierarchical system, which is becoming outdated. It's now mycelium networks where it's like almost like bottom heavy. Everyone's together at the bottom. And we're rising together. Do you know what I mean? And this is my vision. So what you're doing, what I'm doing, creating these small communities and inspiring others to build their small communities. We all just support each other. I'll support your podcast. You support my community. We'll support someone else's community. And it's like, that's real power, and meaningful. Also it's very hard to silence that as well. It's very hard to control. It's very hard you can easily delete someone with 20 million followers, but they can't delete all of us. If there's like 1,000 of me and you around, it's very hard to censor all of us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and that's where I see the real power.
And also, Kash, the ability to speak truth. And I always try and outline lately when I'm saying this in the current climate of censorship. It's not necessarily about being correct with truth. It's about truth. You know, we can be wrong, we can be right. We have to speak from our gut, from our heart. And in conversations like this, you know, so many podcasts are, you know, being pulled or being criticised because they got that wrong, because that statistic was wrong, or this was wrong, or whatever that may be. And that's one thing, but to censor the actual the confidence to just exchange ideas and truth and be able to get it wrong and then be corrected and learn something. We must retain that. And I think in these smaller communities, I kind of look around at the things that I'm interested in still. I mean, some of the bigger podcasts have, a lot of stuff's been homogenized now and sort of kind of polished and manicured into the arc, this overriding arc of kind of that we're discussing. And I just need something to be raw. I hear it in music still. I hear music that's just quantified and perfect and metronomed, and everything's perfect and it's in time, and it's missing that human touch. It's missing that that humanized kind of ability to be wrong and to learn and to grow. I think that's so important. And if we can create that both digitally and physically at this point, I think digitally is the scary one for me. Digitally is the scary one because it's happening so fast, and you know, you could just wake up and it's gone. And how do you? Yeah, that'll be the worry for me, is how do we create that little platform for the 5,000 people? Where's that going to be? Is it just going to be your website? Is it going to be a community that we can use that is, you know, can hold something? I don't know.
Yeah. There's a couple of things you brought up there. One of them is the word that was ringing in my ears with authenticity, you know? So like about staying authentic, and the bigger we get, the more commercial we become, the harder it is to remain true to yourself and authentic, because you're trying to please everyone. You're trying to please corporate giants, your investors, whatever it might be. Whereas when it's just me and you, and you know, we're small podcasts, small communities, we're only answerable to ourselves. So like authenticity is key. And what was the last part you said there again?
Just when we do sort of come through this storm and the digital dust starts to settle, will we be able to host ourselves? You know, will I be able to host this conversation where we cover these kinds of subjects that, in the light of the climate at the minute, are getting squashed?
Yeah. I think psychedelics. There's people that come to Rhythmia every week that I see, and you'll be surprised the number of CEOs or people in influence that are coming through those doors. You know, it's a matter of time. It's almost like the medicines, the plants know what's going on. They're super intelligent. They're hyper intelligent, and this is a call to arms. They can see what's happening around the world. They can see how these giant tech entities are trying to gain a monopoly over the rest of us. And these plants are working through us so we can spread these messages of truth. And imagine if the next Elon Musk does ayahuasca, or imagine if the next Bill Gates is inspired by mushrooms. Do you know what I mean? There's children that are alive today that are going to be the next trillionaires or billionaires of the world, you know? And it's important. It's important that they hear our voices. It's important that they do experience these plant medicines or these mindfulness practices and spiritual practices. And as long as we keep using our voice and using the tools that are given to us to make change, then I'm quietly optimistic that it's almost inevitable that change will come for the greater good. You know, at the moment, it may not seem that way because everything's going wrong. There's paedophile rings being exposed everywhere. There's corrupt governments being exposed everywhere. Tech giants are controlling everyone. You know, there's just control everywhere. But underneath it all, what we don't see is what's happening at the grassroots, which is what I'm doing in my spare time, what you're doing in your spare time, what everyone I know is doing in their spare time. They're meditating, they're doing yoga, they're doing plant medicine, they're healing, they're eating well, they're training, they're exercising. And it's almost like it's like an army, you know, there's an uprising and it's coming.